Welcome, everyone, to this deep dive.
Mm.
And today we're taking a look at Billie Eilish.
Yeah.
And I am so excited about this one.
Me too. This is gonna be good.
I think she's just such a fascinating figure, particularly because we're not just talking about music.
Right.
When we talk about Billie Eilish, we're talking about music and fashion and social commentary all wrapped up in one.
Absolutely. And how those things are changing, especially, for Gen Z.
Yeah,
It's a really fascinating thing to look at.
totally. And for me, one of the first things that comes to mind with Billie Eilish is like, she managed to make baggy clothes a statement,
Uh-huh.
which, in an industry that's so obsessed with showing skin,
Right.
it's almost counterintuitive.
Yeah, it's like the opposite of what you'd expect.
Yeah. Did you have like a similar reaction when she first kind of like came onto the scene?
Absolutely. And I think it's so important to remember how young she was.
Yeah.
She was 14 when she kind of burst onto the scene.
Hmm.
And instead of conforming to, what so many young female artists are expected to do, and present themselves in a hypersexualized way,
Right.
she really made this very deliberate choice to wear baggy clothes.
Yeah, totally. And I think a lot of people remember that quote from Vogue where she said, "I don't want to give you the pleasure of judging my body."
Yeah, that was a powerful statement.
It was like drawing a line in the sand saying, I'm not going to be objectified.
Yeah, it really directly addresses, this concept of the male gaze.
Uh-huh.
This idea that, women in media are primarily presented for male pleasure.
Right.
And she's just turning that on its head and saying, like, no, my body is not here for your consumption.
Right. And it wasn't just about the clothes, right? It was like this whole rejection of how female artists are supposed to look and act.
Exactly. It was a whole new framework for
Yeah.
thinking about what a young female artist could be.
Yeah. And I think it resonated with a lot of people, particularly Gen Z, who are, really pushing back against rigid gender norms and really embracing more fluid identities.
Totally. I think she became a symbol of that.
Yeah. And her music from this era as well kind of like played with these ideas. Let's talk about her 2019 album, When We All Fall Asleep. Where do we go? It felt like a turning point.
Uh-huh.
Not necessarily rejecting sexuality, but maybe exploring it on her own terms.
I think you're right. It was more of a nuanced approach to
Yeah.
sexuality, You think about a song like Bad Guy,
Oh, yeah.
which plays with power dynamics, and she completely subverts the male gaze by becoming the dominant figure,
Yeah.
the one who's in control.
And it's almost like reclaiming the bad guy label and
Mhm.
making it empowering,
Totally.
turning it on its head.
Yeah, it's like I'm owning my desires and I'm going to express them the way I want to express them.
Yeah. And then you have songs like Wish You Were Gay,
Right.
which, while it was controversial to some,
Sure. Really showcases this raw and honest exploration of attraction,
Mhm.
and challenges the idea that female desire needs to be, overtly sexualized or presented in a certain way. It's just vulnerable and relatable.
Yeah, and that honesty, I think, resonated with a lot of listeners. It felt like a breath of fresh air. A genuine exploration of these complex emotions without falling into the typical cliches about female sexuality.
Absolutely.
And then there's that 2021 Vogue cover shoot,
Oh, yeah. That was a moment. Yeah.
where suddenly Billie Eilish is embracing a more traditionally feminine and even like revealing style.
Yeah.
And people had a lot to say about that.
They did,
Some saw it as betrayal of her earlier message, but she addressed that head on, didn't she?
She did.
Yeah,
And she made it very clear this wasn't about, giving into external pressures, but really about taking control of her own narrative.
Right.
Remember that quote, "I'm not letting anybody else dictate what's sexy to me."
It's like she was saying, I can be both. I can choose to cover up and I can choose to embrace different styles. It's my choice, and that's what makes it powerful.
Right. And that sparked such important conversations about body autonomy,
Yeah.
self-representation,
Right.
the right to change and evolve without being, labeled a hypocrite.
Right. It was a really powerful statement about rejecting these, narrow and often unrealistic beauty standards that are imposed on women and really claiming ownership over her body and her image.
Exactly. It's her body, her choice. And it's interesting how that evolution wasn't just like about the visuals.
Right.
It was reflected in her music as well.
Sure.
Her sound matured, her lyrics went deeper.
Think about, therefore, I am from that same era,
Yeah.
that music video.
So good.
It's stripped down, it's simple, but her confidence is just like radiating through the screen.
Oh, yeah.
And it's such a contrast to the, hypersexualized videos that we see so often in pop music.
Totally. And she's rejecting that whole framework,
Yeah.
of how female artists are expected to present themselves.
Right.
And in doing so, she's really encouraging her audience to think critically about those definitions of beauty and sex appeal that we're constantly bombarded with.
It makes you wonder, what does sex appeal even mean?
Right.
In the context of Billie Eilish's career,
Yeah.
it's not about conforming to any external ideal, is it?
No, it's about self-assurance.
Yeah.
It's about artistic integrity. It's about owning your narrative and expressing yourself authentically. It's about depth and substance, more than just surface-level appearances.
It's like she redefined what it means to be a feminist icon for like a new generation.
Totally.
It's not about burning bras or anything like that. It's about, having the freedom to make your own choices, to define your own identity, to use your voice, to advocate for change.
And she's doing that. She's using her platform to speak out against body shaming, to advocate for mental health awareness, to align herself with, important social justice causes.
And she's doing it in a way that feels really authentic to her.
Totally.
Like she's not trying to fit into some preconceived mold of what a celebrity activist should be.
It's so refreshing because it allows her fans, especially young women, to see that they can be multifaceted.
Yeah.
You can be a pop star and an advocate. You can be vulnerable and strong. You can challenge norms and embrace your individuality.
It's a really powerful message.
Yeah.
And it's resonating with millions of people worldwide. Why do you think she's able to connect with her audience on such a deep level?
I think it's her authenticity.
Yeah.
She's not afraid to have difficult conversations.
Yeah.
She talks openly about her struggles with mental health, her insecurities, her anxieties.
She doesn't shy away from the
No.
messy parts of life.
Exactly.
The parts that we all experience but rarely see.
Right.
In that really polished world of celebrity.
And that makes her so relatable.
Total.
It makes her human.
Yeah.
It allows her fans to see themselves in her, to feel seen and understood.
It's like she's saying, it's okay to not be okay.
Exactly.
It's okay to not have it all figured out.
Yes.
What matters is being true to yourself.
Yeah, and that's such a powerful message, especially in a world where young people are constantly pressured to present like a perfect image online.
Yeah, she's given them permission to be vulnerable, to embrace those imperfections, and to celebrate their individuality.
I think that's a big part of why she's become such a cultural phenomenon.
Totally. But it wasn't always smooth sailing, was it?
No.
There was definitely some backlash to her evolution, to her decision to kind of embrace a more feminine aesthetic.
Yeah, some people saw it as a betrayal of her earlier message. But I think it's important to remember that, growth and change are natural parts of life.
Totally. She even addressed it directly, saying that people should be allowed to evolve and explore different sides of themselves without being condemned for it.
Yeah. It's such a valid point. Trying to fit someone into this rigid box based on their past choices really denies them, the agency to grow and change.
Totally.
Yeah.
And it ignores the fact that identity is fluid.
Yes.
It's evolving.
Yeah.
What might have felt authentic to her at 14 might not resonate with her at 19 or 21.
Exactly. It's a reminder that we should allow people, especially young artists, the space to experiment, to make mistakes, and to find their own path.
It's about embracing the journey, the evolution.
Yeah.
Rather than demanding that someone stay frozen in time.
I agree.
What do you think her willingness to push boundaries, to challenge expectations, says about her as an artist?
I think it speaks to her courage and her commitment to staying true to her artistic vision.
Yeah.
She's not afraid to make people uncomfortable, to spark debate, to challenge the status quo.
Yeah, and that's what makes her so compelling, right? She's not just creating music, she's sparking a dialogue about important issues. She's encouraging her fans to think critically about the world around them.
And to challenge those norms, you know.
Totally.
And to not be afraid to use their own voices.
It's like she's saying you don't have to fit in.
Yeah.
You can be whoever you want to be, and you can use your voice to make a difference.
And that's so important, especially for young people who are still trying to, find their place in the world.
Right. It's like she's given them permission to be themselves, to embrace their flaws, and to challenge the status quo.
Totally.
Yeah. When you look at her career trajectory, it's like a masterclass in reclaiming the narrative.
Yeah.
She took control of her image, her sexuality, her message, and in doing so, she's redefined what it means to be a successful female artist in the 21st century.
I think she's proven that you don't have to compromise your values
Right.
or conform to those outdated expectations to achieve success.
It's like she threw out the old rule book and said, we're going to do things differently. And that's incredibly inspiring, not just for aspiring musicians, but for anyone who feels like they don't fit in.
It's a reminder that we all have the power to define our own success, to create our own path, and to use our voices to advocate for a world that's more inclusive, more equitable, and more accepting of individuality.
So what does this all mean for us, for the listeners?
Yeah.
What can we take away from Billie Eilish's journey?
I think her story encourages us to really think critically about the messages that we're bombarded with constantly, especially when it comes to things like beauty and sexuality and success. You know, she's shown us that we don't have to accept those narrow definitions. We can create our own.
It's about recognizing our own power.
Yes.
Our own agency and using it to shape the world that we want to live in.
Total.
It's about embracing our individuality, celebrating our differences, and challenging anything that tries to put us in a box.
And recognizing that growth and change are inevitable. We don't have to stay the same. We can evolve, we can explore different sides of ourselves, and we can redefine what it means to be authentic to who we are.
And on that note, if you haven't already, I highly recommend diving into Billie Eilish's music.
Yes.
Exploring her journey for yourself. It's thought-provoking, it's challenging, and ultimately incredibly inspiring.
It's a journey that will stay with you.
Yeah.
Long after the music stops.
It's a reminder that we all have the potential to make a difference, to challenge norms, and to create a world that celebrates individuality and authenticity.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
And that's a wrap on our deep dive into the world of Billie Eilish.
I really enjoyed this one.
Me too. I hope this conversation has sparked some new ideas and inspired you to think differently about the power of art and identity and self-expression.
Keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep pushing boundaries.
See y'all next time.